into making a scrunchie.
So the mask I made on Tuesday for the kid size. Scrunchies are really, really forgiving. There's no like one solid way to make a scrunchie. Well, there's no solid way to make one, but the size you cut your fabric is very dependent on kind of how big and full you want your scrunchie and how thick your hair is. So like I said, my daughter's hair is really super thin. So normally for her, I cut kind of 18 inches of fabric, usually 18 by about 4 inches wide. And that makes a scrunchie that fits her hair. I'm going to make one a little bit bigger today to see if that does better and if I can fit it over a bun for dance class. So I cut this fabric today at 6 inches wide, by 21 inches long. Look at that. There, like I said, no solid right answer on what size you cut that rectangle. But you want your elastic like half as long or just over half as long as the length of your rectangle. So cut the elastic at 11, I think. And that'll go around her hair a whole bunch of times. It might go around a bun a couple times, which is what I'd like for this little scrunchie today. But sewing scrunchies is ridiculously easy. This is a kid's project. I think my 9-year-old could do it if she wanted to sew. So, really straightforward and easy. You have a rectangle. You could pin this if you're feeling really super ambitious. You can do this on a serger. We had an infinity scarf video, I don't know, back in April-ish. And it's the same technique to make a scrunchie so that we don't have like weird ends to deal with. So you could do this on a serger. You could do this on a sewing machine. I'm going to do it on a sewing machine because that's what I have here today. But what we're going to do is we're going to sew most of the way, leave an opening for turning, and then sew the rest of the way down the one side after it's folded and flat. And again, this is one of those things where a seam allowance is a good idea to be consistent. But you don't necessarily need to be really wide. I switched to a 1/4 inch foot today. This is a scrunchie. A 1/4 inch seam allowance will be just fine. I'm going to leave about 3 inches there. 2 inches. And then sew to the end. Okay. So now we have a tube with a little opening in it. And this is so ridiculously easy. I'm actually just going to press both of these ends here so I have a really firm idea of where my edges are. And then we know where our seam lines are. We don't have to press the rest of it. We want it to be floofy at the end. We're just going to shove this through there. We'll go make the ends match up. The skinnier you do these, you might need a different tool than just your fingers. The first thing we want to do once we have the two ends together is get this nice and flat. Find out if you twisted it while you pulled it through. Do want a twist in there when we're done. A tube turner would be a great idea. It would have twisted, pulled through straight. So once you have that through, normally it lays flat on top of itself. I don't need it flat on top of itself once we're done, so I'm not worried to get it there right now. But if your two sewn edges match up and your two other edges match up, we just want to mark those with pins because we are going to put a twist in this. So the folds are marked with pins. The other edge is not. We're going to take that inside tube and turn it 180 degrees. So we have a sewn edge matching up with a fold and a sewn edge matching up with a fold. And then we're going to sew around that tiny little circle. And we still have a hole over here to pull this all through with. And these little tiny circles are a little tricky. So a narrower foot is easier to use. And again, seam allowance on a scrunchie doesn't really matter. Just want to keep yourselves from getting that fabric looped over the top as you go around. So now we have the end sewn shut on our tube, and we still have our hole to pull through. We have a Mobius strip of fabric. So that's the easy part. Next we get to fish some elastic through there. Let me figure out where I threw the elastic. And this is where a bodkin is your friend. So we are just gonna fish that elastic all the way through. If you're worried about losing the end of it, hang on to it. It's going to follow you. So we have elastic inside our tube. It's not a tube, it's a ring, a little donut. And then you can sew the ends of your elastic shut. And there's a few different ways of doing this. Until I have a wider plate on again. I would just do a bar tack through this skinny elastic. You could also just tie a knot if you don't want to sew this. So the bar tack on your burnine is hiding in your button sewing stitches or buttonhole stitches. And it just does a back and forth in one place. And I'm just going to overlap that elastic just a little bit. That was really super organized. I would have glue. I'd glue those together before I shove them in there. So, not a huge giant knot in there, but enough that it will hold it while you get started. The wider elastic, I would zigzag across it. I grabbed the really skinny stuff. I'm just going to do this a second time because I barely caught the one side of the elastic. So, all tied up, and these are going to slip inside your tube. And then, like on the Infinity Scarf demo, you have two options for closing this up. If you love to hand sew, by all means, do a lovely little whip stitch or in ladder stitch across that opening. It's not very long. It's not going to be super duper obvious where this is once this is wrapped around your hair. But I'm going to top stitch it because lazy wins. I'm going to put that back on a straight stitch foot because with this straight stitch foot, I can get in kind of at a 16th and line my fabric up just inside the edge of that foot. We're just going to sew that opening closed with a tiny little stitch. And this white thread will be hardly visible once we have this up and in somebody's hair. Now, if anybody in the room had a ponytail, which none of us do, we would demo this next part. But you've got lots of options. The stretchier the elastic, the shorter you cut it, kind of the floofier your scrunchie will be once you get it on your hair. I'm thinking this will work around my daughter's bun, which is what I wanted. There's lots of variables, experiment. Everybody's got a different preference. And you can make a headband this way too. Yeah. Scrunchies for your grandkids, granddaughters. So easy. Like really, really, really easy sewing. 6-year-olds have the attention span to do that. So do adults. But once you're all done, it's pretty hard to find where you sewed that shut. So you're not going to ruin your life by having to hand sew it a whole bunch. So that's easy. Matching mask, matching scrunchie, matching tote bag. I don't know where I said matching tote bag yesterday. But make everything matching. It'll make school so much more fun when they have to be all dressed up in their fancy masks. And that's it. So thank you for joining me today. I'd love to see scrunchies in hair because, like I said, I don't have a ponytail. So dreadful demo to finish up with. Thanks for joining me. Be safe, be kind, be calm, and we'll see you guys another day.